blood on marble floors. That's what Emmanuel saw when he opened his bedroom door at 2 a.m. on that sweltering August night. His mother, Sonia, the woman who wore designer handbags to church and quoted proverbs while sipping champagne, stood over his pregnant wife with a wooden pestle raised high, her face twisted into something he didn't recognize. Something ancient and ugly that had been hiding behind expensive perfume and Sunday school teachings. Naomi lay curled on the floor, arms wrapped around her belly like a shield, blood trickling from her split lip, whimpering the way wounded animals do when they've given up fighting back. "She ate my imported biscuits," Sonia shrieked, bringing the pestle down again. "This village rat needs to learn her place." Emmanuel's briefcase hit the floor. His world tilted. Every complaint his wife had whispered through tears, every bruise she'd tried to hide, every time she'd flinched when his mother entered a room, it all crashed over him like truth he'd been too cowardly to see. Before we continue, hit that like and subscribe button. Your support helps us share these powerful African stories. Now, let's begin. You know those families where everything looks blessed from the outside? That was the Okafor household in Enugu. 3 months earlier, before the blood and the pestle and the night that would shatter everything, Naomi sat in her small shop in Nsukka, threading her needle with the kind of patience only poverty teaches. The shop was barely a shop, just a wooden table under a rusted zinc roof, wedged between Mom Ngozi's provision store and the Vulcanizu, who played gospel music too loud on Sundays. But it was hers. The sign above her head, hand-painted by her late mother's brother before he stopped calling, read, "Naomi Stitches, wedding wrappers a specialty." She was hemming a bride's wrapper when Emmanuel walked in, ducking under the low doorway, his Oxford shoes collecting red dust from the unpaved road. He looked like he'd taken a wrong turn from a different life. Crisp white shirt, pressed trousers, the kind of watch that caught afternoon sunlight and threw it back like a challenge. He didn't belong in Nsukka, and his face said he knew it. "I need something fixed," he said, holding up a torn jacket. "The tailor in Enugu said it would take 2 weeks. Someone told me you could do it faster." Naomi took the jacket, her fingers finding the ripped seam automatically. French seam, quality fabric, expensive. "Tomorrow afternoon," she said quietly. 500 naira. He smiled. "I'll pay 1,000 if you tell me your name." That's how it started. A torn jacket, and a smile that felt like the first warm thing she'd known since her mother died 3 years ago. He came back the next day. Then the day after that, no longer pretending he needed tailoring, just sitting on the wooden bench beside her table, talking about everything and nothing while she worked. He told her about his pharmaceutical business in Enugu, his late father, his mother who'd sacrificed everything to send him to university. She told him about losing her parents, the mother who'd raised her alone on stories about a father who died before she was born, the loneliness that felt like a permanent scar. 6 weeks later, he proposed. She said yes before he finished asking, her needle still in her hand, thread dangling like hope made visible. The traditional marriage ceremony happened fast. Too fast, the village aunties whispered, but Naomi didn't care. She wore white lace and flowers in her hair, carrying a bouquet Emmanuel's mother had sent from Enugu, expensive roses that looked out of place against the village's red earth and palm trees. Sonia arrived in a Mercedes with tinted windows, stepping out in gold jewelry that caught light like warning signals. She was beautiful in that preserved way wealthy women achieved through money and spite, her skin smooth, her wrapper imported, her smile perfect and completely empty. During the ceremony, while Emmanuel beamed and the drummers played, and the whole village celebrated because one of their own was marrying up, Sonia stood apart, accepting congratulations with a smile that never touched her eyes. Naomi watched her future mother-in-law whisper to relatives who'd traveled from Enugu, their faces shifting from polite interest to something colder. "My son could have married a doctor, a lawyer," Sonia's voice carried across the compound during a lull in the drumming. She wasn't trying to whisper anymore. Instead, he chose this. Naomi clutched her bouquet tighter, the thorns from the expensive roses pressing into her palms through the wrapping. She pretended not to hear, kept smiling, kept dancing when the music swelled again. But she felt it, the first crack in her miracle, the first whisper of what was coming. At the reception, Sonia approached with a glass of red wine and that same perfect, empty smile. "My daughter," she said loudly enough for everyone to hear, pulling Naomi into an embrace that felt like a cage. "Welcome to the family." When she stepped back, red wine bloomed across Naomi's white dress like a wound. The glass had tipped, somehow, splashing across the lace bodice her mother's sister had spent weeks beating. "Oh no!" Sonia's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with manufactured horror. "I'm so sorry. These old hands, so clumsy. Someone bring water. Quickly." Everyone rushed forward. Emmanuel appeared with napkins, dabbing frantically at the stain while his mother stood back, apologizing repeatedly, her voice dripping with concern that everyone believed because why wouldn't they? It was an accident. Just an unfortunate accident at a wedding where a village seamstress had dared to marry above her station. But Naomi saw it. In the split second before Sonia's face transformed into apology, she saw the truth in her future mother-in-law's eyes. The message was clear. You don't belong here. And somewhere in the celebration's noise, beneath the drums and laughter and Emmanuel's reassurances that the dress could be cleaned, Naomi felt the first cold finger of fear touch her spine. She should have run then. Should have gathered her small life and disappeared back into the anonymity of village survival. But she didn't know yet that some cages lock from the inside, that love could be a trap, that the woman smiling at her wedding reception was already planning her destruction. She didn't know that 3 months later, she'd be bleeding on marble floors, begging for the life of her unborn child while that same smile watched with satisfaction. All she knew, standing there in her stained white dress while the celebration continued around her, was that she'd been marked. The war had begun. She just didn't know it yet. The Okafor family compound rose from Enugu's independence layout like a monument to ambition and old money pretending to be older. The original house, where Emmanuel's father had ruled before death claimed him 10 years ago, sat squat and solid, red clay bricks and corrugated iron roof speaking of a generation that built with sweat and stubbornness. But Sonia had added wings, glass and steel extensions that jutted from the old house like new teeth in an ancient mouth, modern and sharp and completely out of place. Emmanuel lived in the new wing with its floor-to-ceiling windows and Italian tiles, but the invisible border meant nothing. This was still his mother's kingdom. She held the deed. She managed the pharmaceutical distribution business his father had started. She decided who ate what for dinner, and when, and whether you deserved seconds. Naomi understood this within the first hour of arriving as a bride. "You'll sleep here," Sonia had said, opening the door to the bedroom in the new wing. Beautiful room, yes. King-sized bed, air conditioning, an ensuite bathroom with a bathtub Naomi had only seen in magazines. But the way Sonia said here, with that slight emphasis, made it clear this was permission, not ownership. A gift that could be revoked. Naomi decided she would win her mother-in-law over through service, through becoming the kind of daughter-in-law whose value couldn't be questioned. She woke at 5 a.m., before the compound stirred, and swept the entire courtyard with a broom that left her palms blistered. She cooked elaborate meals, egusi soup with 4 types of meat, jollof rice with a perfect red stain, pounded yams so smooth it looked machine-made. Sonia tasted everything with the expression of someone expecting poison. "This soup is too salty," she said on Tuesday, pushing her plate away. "My husband never complained about my cooking." "The rice is too dry," she announced on Thursday. "Did they not teach you to cook in that village?" "The yam is lumpy," she declared on Saturday, even though it wasn't, even though Emmanuel was eating it enthusiastically across the table. Naomi apologized every time, her voice soft and accommodating, the way her mother had taught her to speak to elders. "I'm sorry, Mama. I'll do better tomorrow." Emmanuel laughed it off each time, kissing Naomi's forehead before leaving for work. "Mama is just particular. You'll get used to her. She was the same way with my father's sisters when they visited. It's not personal." But it was personal. Naomi knew it in the way Sonia watched her move through the house, assessing every gesture like a judge looking for infractions. In the way meals appeared on the table for Emmanuel and his mother while Naomi had to serve herself from what remained. In the way Sonia praised the housegirl's cleaning but found fault with Naomi's. "You missed dust on the windowsill," Sonia would say, running her finger along surfaces Naomi had scrubbed on swollen knees. "The bathroom smells. Did you use enough bleach? These curtains need washing. Can't you see how dirty they are?" Naomi washed the curtains, scrubbed the bathroom twice, cleaned windowsills with a toothbrush. Nothing was ever enough. 3 weeks in, she unpacked the last of her belongings from Nsukka, the small bag she'd carried from her old life into this new one. She had so little. Some clothes, a Bible her mother had given her, a rosary, and one photograph, the only image she had of her mother. Adiz, young and smiling, holding infant Naomi outside their village church. The photo was faded, creased from being carried everywhere, the edges soft from years of being held by lonely hands. Naomi placed it on her dresser, propped against the mirror where she could see it every morning. A reminder that someone had loved her once, completely, without conditions. The next day, the photograph was gone. She searched everywhere. Under the bed, behind the dresser, in drawers she hadn't opened. Panic rose in her chest like water filling a drowning person's lungs. That photo was all she had left. The only proof her mother had existed, had smiled, had held her. She found it that evening, torn cleanly in half, lying under Sonia's bedroom door like trash that had blown in from somewhere unimportant. Her mother's face on one half, baby Naomi on the other, separated by a rip so precise it looked deliberate. Naomi's hands shook as she picked up the pieces. She stood outside Sonia's door for 5 minutes, trying to find the courage to knock. When she finally did, her voice came out smaller than she intended. "Mama? May I speak with you?" Sonia opened the door in her silk nightgown, face cream making her skin shine like plastic. "Yes. My photograph. Did you see it? It was on my dresser and now it's..." Naomi held up the torn pieces. Sonia glanced at them with mild interest, the way someone might look at a broken pen. "The wind must have carried it. These village photos so fragile. You should keep your things more carefully." "But it's torn. Things get damaged in this house if you're not careful." Sonia's smile was gentle, maternal even. "You should go to bed now. You look tired. Don't forget to wake early tomorrow. The compound needs sweeping before Emmanuel leaves for work." The door closed softly, definitively. Naomi stood in the hallway holding the torn photograph, and something inside her understood with perfect clarity. This wasn't about salt and soup or dust on windowsills. This was about erasing her. Piece by piece, memory by memory, until nothing remained but what Sonia allowed her to be. The test sat on the bathroom counter, like a verdict. 2 pink lines, clear and undeniable, glowing under the fluorescent light that hummed like a hymn. Naomi's hands trembled as she picked it up, brought it closer to her face, as if proximity might change reality. But the lines stayed. 2 of them. Life announcing itself in chemical certainty. She'd suspected for a week. The tender breasts, the exhaustion that felt like gravity had doubled, the way certain smells made her stomach revolt. But suspecting and knowing were different countries, and she'd just crossed the border into one she couldn't leave. 4 months married. A baby already coming. She found Emmanuel in their bedroom, getting ready for work, knotting his tie in front of the mirror with the practiced efficiency of a man who'd been doing it for years. She stood in the doorway holding the test behind her back, watching him, memorizing this moment before everything changed. "Emmanuel." He turned, reading something in her voice. "What's wrong?" She brought the test forward. 2 lines. For a heartbeat. He just stared. Then his face cracked open into pure joy, the kind of happiness that made him look like a boy again. He crossed the room in 2 strides, picked her up, spun her around despite her breathless protest. "Naomi, a baby. We're having a baby. Put me down, you'll make me dizzy. The mother of my children." He was laughing, kissing her face, her neck, her hands. God is faithful. Mama will be so happy. We have to tell her. Something cold touched Naomi's spine at those words, but Emmanuel's joy was infectious, overwhelming. Maybe she'd been wrong about Sonia. Maybe a grandchild would soften her. Maybe blood could do what perfect housewifery couldn't, earn her a place in this family. They told her at dinner that evening. Emmanuel couldn't wait, couldn't contain himself. The moment Sonia sat down at the head of the table, he announced it like a man who'd won the lottery. Mama, we have news. Naomi is pregnant. You're going to be a grandmother. Sonia's fork clattered against her plate. The sound rang through the dining room like a gunshot. Her face went completely still, all expression draining away until she looked like a beautiful mask of herself. The silence stretched. Emmanuel's smile faltered. So soon? Sonia's voice came out quiet, controlled. You've only been married 4 months. Yes, but we're married, Mama. This is a blessing. People will talk. She picked up her fork again, deliberately, like she was loading a weapon. They'll say she trapped you. That this was her plan all along. Get pregnant quickly before you realize what you've done. Mama. Emmanuel's voice carried shock and something that might have been the beginning of anger. That's my wife you're talking about. My child. Sonia smiled then, but it was the smile of someone who just confirmed a diagnosis. Of course. Forgive me. I'm just surprised. Shocked even. Everything is happening so fast. She stood, her meal barely touched. Congratulations to you both. I need to lie down. Sudden headache. She left the dining room in silk and expensive perfume, leaving Naomi and Emmanuel sitting in the wreckage of what should have been celebration. She's just surprised, Emmanuel said, but he didn't sound convinced. She'll come around. Once the shock wears off, she'll be excited. Naomi said nothing. She was thinking about the way Sonia's face had gone still. The way, trapped, had come out of her mouth like she'd been thinking it for months, waiting for confirmation. That night, Naomi woke at 3 a.m. with her bladder pressing, pregnancy already making its demands. She shuffled to the bathroom, half asleep, then climbed back into bed beside Emmanuel's snoring form. That's when she saw it, a figure in their bedroom doorway, silhouetted against the hallway light, standing completely still. Sonia, just standing there, watching them sleep, her nightgown a pale smudge in the darkness, her face invisible, but her presence unmistakable. Not moving, not speaking, just watching with an intensity Naomi could feel like heat from a fire. Naomi's scream tore through the house. Emmanuel jolted awake, fumbling for the light switch. What's wrong? Your mother. She was standing in the doorway, watching us. The hallway was empty. No figure. No Sonia. Just empty space and fluorescent light humming its indifferent song. Emmanuel ran to check. Returned minutes later, his face apologetic. Mama's asleep in her room. Door closed. She's not even awake, Naomi. I saw her. You had a nightmare. Pregnancy hormones, they cause vivid dreams. My colleague's wife had terrible nightmares when she was pregnant. Emmanuel, I was awake. I saw. She was asleep. His voice carried an edge now, the edge of a man who wanted this conversation over. Maybe you saw shadows. Maybe you were sleepwalking yourself. But Mama was in her room, asleep. Okay. Naomi pulled the covers up to her chin and said nothing. But she knew what she'd seen. And she knew Emmanuel was lying or Sonia was, or both. The baby fluttered in her belly, barely there, a whisper of movement. She wrapped her arms around her stomach protectively. The meals changed after that. Sonia began serving Naomi separately, smaller portions on a different plate, always cold even when everyone else's food steamed. And there was something else, a bitter taste underneath the pepper and salt that Naomi couldn't identify. She ate anyway because hunger was stronger than suspicion. But after every meal, nausea hit her like a fist. She spent hours in the bathroom, vomiting until her throat burned. It's morning sickness, Emmanuel said, rubbing her back while she heaved. Perfectly normal, babe. But morning sickness didn't explain why it only happened after Sonia's meals. It didn't explain the bitter taste. It didn't explain the way Sonia smiled while setting down Naomi's plate, that same gentle, maternal smile that never reached her eyes. The baby was coming, and Sonia had already decided it shouldn't. By the second trimester, Naomi's belly had announced itself to the world, a firm swell beneath her wrapper that made strangers smile and offer blessings. "May God protect the child," market women said, touching her shoulder with calloused hands. But inside the Okafor compound, her growing stomach seemed to trigger something dark in Sonia, something that had been waiting beneath the surface for permission to emerge. The chores came with the sunrise. "Naomi." Sonia's voice would cut through the morning quiet. "The compound walls need scrubbing. They're filthy." The compound walls stretched 20 feet high around the property, concrete stained red from harmattan dust and rain. Naomi would stand in the afternoon heat with a bucket and brush, her pregnant belly pressed against the wall, scrubbing until her arms burned and sweat soaked through her clothes. The sun beat down like punishment. Her back screamed. But Sonia would inspect afterward, running her fingers along the concrete, finding spots Naomi had missed. "Here. And here. Do it again." When Emmanuel noticed Naomi moving slowly one evening, wincing as she lowered herself onto the couch, he frowned. "Mama, isn't this too much for her? She's pregnant." Sonia's smile was honey over glass. "Exercise is good for pregnant women. My generation didn't sit around being lazy. We worked until the day we delivered, and our children were strong because of it. Do you want your wife to become one of these modern women who can't even sweep without complaining?" Emmanuel's frown faded. "I guess you're right. You know better than I do." The water buckets came next. Despite having a water pump and indoor plumbing throughout the compound, Sonia decided the storage tanks needed filling manually. "The pump is wasting electricity," she announced. "Naomi can fetch water from the borehole like we used to. It builds character." 20-liter buckets, carried on Naomi's head in trips that made her knees buckle and her vision blur. 6 trips. 8 trips. 10. Until her legs trembled and the baby kicked in protest against her compressed organs. Then the laundry. Mountains of it. Emmanuel's work shirts, Sonia's expensive wrappers, bed sheets that could have gone in the washing machine gathering dust in the laundry room. But Sonia insisted on hand washing. "The machine damages fabric," she said sweetly. "A good wife washes her husband's clothes by hand. It's a blessing, not a burden." Naomi's hands cracked and bled from the detergent. Her ankles swelled until her slippers left indents in puffy flesh. The pain in her lower back became a constant companion, a grinding ache that made sleep impossible. At her prenatal checkup, the doctor's face creased with concern as she examined Naomi's blood pressure, her swollen feet, the way Naomi flinched when she pressed on her abdomen. "Mrs. Okafor, you're showing signs of strain. Your blood pressure is elevated. You need to rest more. Reduce physical activity. If this continues, you risk preterm labor." "I'll rest," Naomi promised. But that evening, when she tried to tell Emmanuel what the doctor said, Sonia was there, appearing in the doorway like she'd been listening through walls. "She's lying," Sonia said, and then her face crumpled, tears springing to her eyes with practiced ease. "She's poisoning you against me. I only ask her to help around the house like a proper wife should, normal things, and she runs to doctors to complain I'm killing her." The tears flowed freely now, her voice breaking. "After everything I've done for this family, after raising you alone when your father died, this is how she repays me? With accusations." Emmanuel's face hardened. He turned to Naomi, and she saw it happening, saw him choosing, and saw the exhaustion from 12-hour workdays, making the choice easier. "Can you just try to get along with her?" His voice came out sharp, impatient. "Please? I'm tired, Naomi. I work all day to provide for this family, and I come home to this drama every single evening. She's my mother. She raised me. Can you just try?" Naomi's throat closed. The words she needed wouldn't come. What could she say that he would believe? "I'm trying," she whispered. But she stopped trying to tell him after that. The herbal tea appeared a week later. Sonia brought it to Naomi's room on a tray, her smile warm and maternal. "For the baby," she said. "Traditional herbs. My mother gave them to me when I was pregnant with Emmanuel. It strengthens the womb and prevents miscarriage. Drink it every morning." The tea was dark brown, smelling of bitter roots and something else Naomi couldn't identify. Something that made her stomach turn even before she tasted it. "Drink," Sonia urged, watching. "All of it. For my grandchild's health." Naomi drank that first morning, forcing it down while Sonia stood over her. The bitterness coated her tongue, burned her throat. Within an hour, she was cramping, doubled over on the bathroom floor while her body tried to expel something that wouldn't leave. The next morning, Sonia brought the tea again. "Drink." But this time, when Sonia left the room, Naomi poured it into the potted plant by the window. A healthy fern that had been green and lush. She did this for 3 days, pretending to drink, pouring the tea into the plant when Sonia's footsteps faded down the hallway. On the 4th day, she found the fern wilted, its leaves brown and curled like burned paper, stems drooping like broken necks. By the 5th day, the plant was dead. Completely dead. Soil dried despite Naomi watering it with nothing but Sonia's herbal tea. Naomi stood over the dead fern, her hands on her swollen belly, understanding flooding through her with ice water clarity. Not herbs to strengthen the womb. Herbs to empty it. Emmanuel wasn't evil. Naomi had to remind herself of this on the days when his willful blindness felt like betrayal. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't a monster. He was just weak, and weakness, she was learning, could destroy just as thoroughly as malice. He'd been 12 when his father died. Heart attack in the pharmacy he'd built from nothing, collapsing behind the counter while measuring out chloroquine tablets for a customer who screamed for help that came too late. Emmanuel had found him there, his father's face pressed against the cool tiles, eyes open and empty. Sonia had told this story at their wedding, her voice breaking in all the right places. How she'd been left with nothing but debt and a son to raise. How she'd worked 3 jobs, selling provisions in the market by day, plaiting hair in the evening, washing clothes for wealthy families at night. How her hands had bled and her back had bent, but she never complained because Emmanuel was her purpose, her reason to keep breathing. "I built this empire for you," she'd say, touching his face with hands that still bore the scars of those years. "Every sacrifice, every sleepless night, it was all for you." And Emmanuel believed it because it was true. She had sacrificed. She had worked herself into early arthritis and high blood pressure. She had turned his father's failing pharmacy into a pharmaceutical distribution network that supplied half of Enugu. She'd earned her crown through blood and sweat, and Emmanuel wore her sacrifice like chains he'd welded onto himself. So when Naomi came to him one evening, sleeves rolled up to show the bruises blooming purple and yellow on her forearms, Emmanuel's first instinct wasn't belief. It was defense. "What happened?" he asked, taking her arms gently, examining the marks. "Your mother. She slammed the kitchen door on my arm this morning, then the bedroom door this afternoon. She said it was an accident both times, but Emmanuel, she looked at me while she did it." She smiled. He dropped her arms like they'd burned him. Before he could respond, Sonia appeared in the doorway, her timing perfect as always, her face already crumpling into tears. "She's trying to make you hate me." Sonia's voice broke on a sob. "I would never hurt her. How can you believe her over your own mother? After everything I've done, everything I've sacrificed." She pressed her hands to her face, shoulders shaking. "Maybe I should just leave this house. Go back to the village. Let her have you completely, since that's what she wants." "Mama, no. I'm just a burden now. An old woman who isn't wanted in her own son's home." She turned away, the picture of wounded dignity. "Your father would be so disappointed." Emmanuel's face went pale at that. The invocation of his father, the man whose death had created this entire dynamic, was a weapon Sonia wielded with surgical precision. He turned to Naomi, and his eyes held a desperate plea. "Both of you need to work this out. I can't be the referee. She's my mother. You're my wife. Can't you just find a way to coexist? For me, Emmanuel, I'm trying to tell you. I don't want to hear it. His voice went hard. Not tonight. I'm exhausted. Can we please just have one evening of peace in this house? Naomi watched him walk away, comforting his weeping mother, and understood that she was alone in this. The night she told him the truth, she'd gathered every scrap of courage she possessed. She'd waited until they were in bed, the lights off, speaking to the darkness because she couldn't face his eyes. Emmanuel, your mother is trying to kill our baby. The silence that followed felt like falling. Then he moved, fast, switching on the lamp, his face transformed by an anger she'd never seen before. What did you just say? The tea she's been giving me. It's not herbs for the baby. It's poisonous. I tested it on a plant, and the plant died. That's insane. He was shouting now, actually shouting, his voice filling their bedroom like violence. That's my mother you're accusing. She carried me for 9 months. She raised me alone. She sacrificed everything, and you're saying she wants to kill her grandchild. Emmanuel, please just listen. How dare you? His hands were shaking. How dare you accuse her of something so evil? You think I don't see what you're doing? You're jealous of my relationship with her. You want to isolate me from my own mother. That's not. Get out of my face. His voice dropped to something cold and final. I don't want to hear another word about this. Not tonight. Not ever. Do you understand me? Naomi understood. She understood that the man she'd married was trapped in a cage built by his mother's sacrifice and his own guilt, and there was no key that would free him until he chose to see it himself. She never brought it up again. But late at night, while Emmanuel slept peacefully beside her, Naomi lay awake with her hands on her belly, feeling the baby move, and made a silent promise. I will survive this. We will survive this. Even if I have to do it alone. The baby kicked against her palm, as if in agreement. And somewhere in the house, in her room with its silk sheets and expensive furniture bought with years of sacrifice, Sonia smiled in the darkness, knowing she'd won this round. Knowing that a son's guilt was stronger than a wife's truth. Knowing that she could do anything, Emmanuel would find a way to forgive her. Because that's what good sons did. 3rd trimester. Naomi's belly had grown so large she could no longer see her own feet when she stood. The baby pressed against her lungs, making every breath a conscious effort, turning sleep into a luxury she could only steal in 15-minute increments before needing to shift position or use the bathroom again. But sleep deprivation wasn't her biggest problem anymore. Hunger was. Sonia had refined cruelty into a schedule. Breakfast appeared at 7, eggs and bread and tea for her and Emmanuel. Naomi's portion, when it came, arrived at 8:30 after Emmanuel left for work. Cold eggs congealed on the plate. Toast hard as cardboard. And always, always, that bitter aftertaste she'd learned to recognize. She stopped eating the food Sonia prepared. Started claiming she wasn't hungry, that pregnancy had killed her appetite. Emmanuel, distracted by work and willfully blind to everything else, accepted this explanation without question. So Naomi became a thief in her own home. At 3 a.m., when the compound fell into its deepest silence, she would slip out of bed, moving with the careful slowness of someone navigating a minefield. Down the hallway, past Sonia's closed door where she swore she could feel her mother-in-law's consciousness waiting, listening. Into the kitchen where she would steal food like a criminal, a handful of gari, some groundnuts, yesterday's leftover rice eaten cold with her fingers, standing in the dark, tears running down her face while she chewed. This was what she'd become. A pregnant woman stealing scraps in the middle of the night because the alternative was starvation. The storage room incident happened on a Tuesday afternoon. Naomi had gone to fetch detergent. The room was at the back of the compound, windowless, with a heavy door that stuck in humid weather. She was reaching for the shelf when she heard it, the click of the lock turning. Hello? She tried the door. It didn't move. Hello? Someone locked the door. No answer. Just footsteps walking away. Measured. Deliberate. the soft slide of expensive slippers against concrete that could only belong to one person. Naomi pounded on the door until her fists hurt, screamed until her throat went raw. The storage room was an oven, tin roof magnifying the afternoon sun, no ventilation, no light except what seeped through cracks in the door frame. Sweat poured off her body. The baby kicked frantically, disturbed by her elevated heart rate, by the heat, by the panic flooding her system. She lost track of time. Minutes felt like hours. Hours might have been minutes. She sat on the floor, conserving energy, trying to calm her breathing, talking to the baby. It's okay. We're okay. Someone will come. Daddy will come home and find us. When the door finally opened, it was the house girl, looking for a mop bucket, her scream of surprise bringing Emmanuel running from where he'd just arrived home from work. Naomi, what happened? How did you get locked in here? Your mother, Naomi gasped, Emmanuel helping her to her feet. She locked me in. I heard her walk away. But Sonia was already there, face creased with concern, hands fluttering. Locked? Oh my God. The door sticks sometimes. You must have pulled it too hard and it jammed shut. We've been meaning to fix that lock. Emmanuel, didn't I tell you to call the carpenter? You locked me in. I heard you walk away. Why would I do that? Sonia's eyes went wide, wounded. I didn't even know you were back here. I've been in my room all afternoon with a headache. Ask patience. She turned to the house girl, who nodded, confirming that Madam had been resting. Emmanuel looked between them, and Naomi saw him choose the easier story. The one that didn't make his mother a monster. The lock has been sticking. I'll call someone tomorrow. Come on, let's get you some water. That night, lying in bed while Emmanuel snored, Naomi wondered if she was going crazy. Had the door just stuck? Had she imagined the deliberate footsteps? Was grief and pregnancy hormones making her paranoid, turning ordinary household problems into evidence of conspiracy? Maybe Sonia was right. Maybe she was the problem. The village girl who didn't understand how wealthy families operated, who was too suspicious, too ungrateful, too everything wrong. The stairs confirmed she wasn't crazy. 2 days later, heading downstairs in the early morning dim, Naomi's feet went out from under her. She was falling, stomach first toward the marble floor, arms flailing for a banister that was suddenly too far away. She twisted mid-fall, protecting her belly, taking the impact on her hip and shoulder instead. Pain exploded through her body. She lay at the bottom of the stairs, breathing hard, terrified to move, waiting to feel the gush of blood that would mean she'd lost the baby. Emmanuel found her there minutes later. What happened? The stairs. They're slippery. There's something on them. She pointed up. In the morning light streaming through windows, she could see it. A thin sheen on the 3rd and 4th steps. Oil. Cooking oil, spread carefully on the stone. Emmanuel touched it, brought his fingers to his nose. This is cooking oil. How did cooking oil get on the stairs? Your mother put it there. Naomi, stop. His voice carried a warning now. Just stop. You're seeing conspiracies everywhere. Maybe the house girl spilled something while cleaning. At 5 a.m.? Before anyone's awake. Or maybe you're just clumsy. You're pregnant. Your center of balance is off. I'm taking you to the doctor to make sure the baby's fine. But please stop blaming my mother for every accident in this house. The doctor confirmed the baby was unharmed. Naomi had fractured her wrist taking the fall, but the baby's heartbeat was strong, perfect, oblivious to the war being waged around it. Emmanuel took her home, settled her on the couch, brought her water and painkillers, his guilt making him attentive for the first time in weeks. Sonia appeared with soup, her face a mask of concern. My poor daughter. So clumsy. Pregnant women need to be more careful on stairs. Naomi looked into her mother-in-law's eyes and saw the truth there. Saw the satisfaction hiding behind the performance of worry. Saw that Sonia knew exactly what had happened because Sonia had made it happen. And she saw something else too. Sonia wasn't going to stop. This wasn't about making Naomi uncomfortable anymore. This was attempted murder moving at the speed of plausible deniability. That night, alone in her bedroom because Emmanuel had fallen asleep on the couch, Naomi knelt beside her bed, fractured wrist throbbing, baby rolling inside her like a sea creature, and prayed. Not for peace anymore. Not for Sonia's heart to change. Not for Emmanuel to see. She prayed for survival. For protection. For someone, anyone, to witness what was happening before it was too late. God, if you're real, she whispered, tears soaking into the bedspread, please send someone to see what's happening to me. Because I don't know how much longer I can survive this alone. The baby kicked hard against her ribs, as if answering, hold on. Just hold on. So she held on. Through hunger and fear and isolation, through a husband who chose comfort over truth and a mother-in-law who smiled while sharpening knives. She held on because the alternative was giving Sonia exactly what she wanted. And Naomi had survived too much to die in a golden cage. The Lagos flight was cancelled due to thunderstorms. Emmanuel sat in the departure lounge at Murtala Muhammad Airport, watching lightning fork across the sky through floor-to-ceiling windows, listening to the gate agent announce delays in that practiced monotone that meant nothing would move tonight. He should have been relieved. The conference could wait. He'd done these pharmaceutical distributor meetings a dozen times, knew the presentations by heart, and could deliver his pitch in his sleep. But something gnawed at him, something that had been building for weeks like pressure behind his sternum. Naomi's face that morning. The way she flinched when his mother entered the kitchen. The weight she'd lost despite being 7 months pregnant, her collarbones too prominent, her wedding ring loose on her finger. Both of you need to work this out, he'd said 100 times, as if domestic peace was something that could be negotiated like a business contract. As if the problem was equal fault on both sides rather than something he was too cowardly to examine. His phone buzzed. A text from his colleague. Storm's getting worse. They're canceling all evening flights. Head home, brother. We'll reschedule. Emmanuel stared at the message. He could get a hotel near the airport and try again tomorrow morning. That was the logical choice. The comfortable choice. Instead, he found himself walking back to his car, driving through rain that hammered his windshield like accusations, heading back to Enugu on roads that flooded and gleamed under his headlights. Something was wrong at home. He'd known it for months, but had papered over that knowledge with work and willful ignorance and his mother's tears. But tonight, driving through a thunderstorm that felt biblical, he couldn't escape it anymore. The compound was dark when he arrived just past 2 a.m. Generator off to save fuel, Sonia always said, though they could afford to run it all night. His key turned quietly in the lock. The house swallowed him into its silence, air conditioning absent, heat pressing down like judgment. Then he heard it, crying, muffled and desperate, coming from upstairs. And something else, a sound he couldn't identify at first. Rhythmic, heavy, like meat being tenderized. Thud, thud, thud. Emmanuel took the stairs 3 at a time, his heart slamming against his ribs. Their bedroom door was ajar, light spilling into the hallway. He pushed it open. The scene burned itself into his retinas with the permanence of trauma. His mother stood over his wife, a wooden pestle raised high, the heavy kind used for pounding yam, dense wood carved smooth by generations of use. Sonia's face was twisted into something unrecognizable, eyes wild, mouth pulled back in a snarl that showed all her teeth. Naomi lay curled on the floor, arms wrapped around her swollen belly, blood trickling from her split lip, her eye already swelling shut. Her nightgown was torn. Bruises bloomed across her arms like grotesque flowers. She ate my imported biscuits. Sonia shrieked, bringing the pestle down again. It connected with Naomi's shoulder with a sound that made Emmanuel's stomach turn. This village rat needs to learn her place. Get away from her. Emmanuel's voice came out raw, animalistic. He crossed the room in 2 strides, grabbing his mother's arm mid-swing, wrenching the pestle from her grip. It clattered to the marble floor, the sound obscenely loud in the sudden silence. Sonia spun on him, and for a moment, he didn't recognize her. This wasn't his mother. This was something wearing her face, something that had been hiding beneath designer clothes and Sunday school teachings and manipulative tears. Emmanuel. His name came out of her mouth like she was surprised to see him. "You're home early."
He couldn't speak.
Couldn't process what he was seeing. His brain kept trying to rewrite the scene into something that made sense, something that didn't shatter everything he'd built his life on. Behind him, Naomi whimpered. The sound broke through his paralysis. He knelt beside his wife, his hands shaking as he touched her face gently, seeing the damage up close. Split lip, swollen eye, bruises on her arms, her shoulders, finger-shaped marks on her throat like someone had tried to strangle her. "Every complaint," he whispered, more to himself than to her. "Every bruise you tried to show me. Every time you said something was wrong. It was all true." Naomi's good eye focused on him through tears. She didn't say anything. "I didn't need to." Her battered face said, "I told you. I told you, and you didn't believe me." He stood slowly, turned to face his mother. "What did you do?" Sonia's face was rearranging itself, smoothing back into the mask he knew. Tears appeared on cue, sliding down her cheeks with practiced ease. "Emmanuel, you don't understand. She's been so disrespectful. She ate my special biscuits, the ones from Dubai that cost. You almost killed her." His voice came out flat, emotionless, because emotion would make him do something he couldn't take back. "You almost killed my wife. My child. I was just disciplining her. She needs to learn respect. She's not from our class. She doesn't understand. Get out." Sonia's tears stopped like someone had turned off a faucet. "What?" "Get out of my house.
Right now.
Before I call the police and have you arrested for attempted murder. This is my house." Her voice rose, all pretense of tears abandoned. "I hold the deed. Your father built this compound. You live here because I allow it. Then I'll leave." Emmanuel pulled out his phone and started dialing. "But first I'm calling an ambulance for my wife, and then I'm calling the police to report what you did. And you can explain to them why you were beating a pregnant woman with a wooden pestle at 2 a.m. You wouldn't dare." But her voice wavered now, uncertainty creeping in. "Try me." They stared at each other across the bedroom, 7 months of willful blindness combusting in the space between them. Emmanuel saw his mother clearly for the first time since his father died, saw past the sacrifice narrative she'd weaponized, saw the control and manipulation and cruelty that had always been there, hidden behind tears and guilt. Sonia's face went cold, calculating. The mask dropped completely.
"Fine.
Choose her. Choose this worthless village girl over your own mother. But understand what you're losing." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to something venomous. "I've been trying to cause a miscarriage since she announced that pregnancy. I will not let village blood dilute our family lineage. I'd rather see that baby dead than see it born carrying her inferior genes." The confession hung in the air like smoke from a gun. Emmanuel's phone nearly slipped from his shaking hand. You wanted to kill my child? It's not your child. It's her trap. She got pregnant deliberately to lock you down, and I won't allow it. Get out." The roar came from somewhere primal. "Get out of this house right now, or I swear to God, I will physically throw you out." Sonia drew herself up, straightened her nightgown, her dignity offended. "If you choose her, I will disown you, cut you from my will. Every business connection I've built for you will crumble. Your father's legacy that I've protected, I'll make sure you lose everything. I don't care. You'll care when you're bankrupt and she leaves you for someone who can provide. Get out." The scream made Sonia flinch. For the first time, genuine fear crossed her face. She looked at her son and didn't see the guilty, manipulatable boy anymore. She saw a man who had finally chosen his wife over his mother's chains. "You'll regret this," she said quietly, gathering her dignity like armor. "Both of you will regret this." She walked out of the bedroom with her head high, and Emmanuel slammed the door behind her so hard the frame cracked. Then he collapsed beside Naomi, pulling her gently into his arms, feeling her body shake with sobs against his chest. "I'm sorry," he whispered, over and over, like a prayer or a confession. "I'm so sorry. I should have believed you. I should have protected you. I'm so sorry." Outside, they heard Sonia's door slam, heard her moving around, packing, heard a taxi being called, the gate opening, the sound of her leaving fading into the pre-dawn darkness. Emmanuel held his wife tighter and dialed for an ambulance, already praying that the baby had survived his mother's final act of cruelty, that the damage could be undone, that he hadn't realized the truth too late. The ambulance screamed through Enugu's empty streets, its siren cutting through the 3 a.m. silence like a knife. Emmanuel sat in the back, holding Naomi's hand, watching the paramedic check her vitals with efficient movements that revealed nothing. Numbers on machines, beeping that either meant everything was fine or everything was ending. "The baby?" Naomi's voice came out cracked, desperate. "We'll know more at the hospital," the paramedic said, her face professionally neutral. "Try to stay calm. Stress isn't good for you right now." As if calm was possible. As if Naomi could simply decide not to feel terror while her body cataloged the damage. The throbbing in her shoulder where the pestle had connected, the splitting pain in her head, the terrifying absence of movement from her belly, where the baby usually kicked constantly. "Please," she prayed silently. "Please let my baby be alive. Take anything else, but not that." The University of Nigeria teaching hospital emergency room at 3 a.m. was a study in controlled chaos. Nurses moved between beds where malaria patients sweated through fevers and accident victims bled into gauze. A doctor appeared, young and exhausted, his white coat stained with someone else's emergency. "Mrs. Okafor?" He checked her chart. "You were assaulted while pregnant?" "My mother did this," Emmanuel said before Naomi could answer, his voice carrying shame and rage in equal measure. "My mother beat her with a wooden pestle." The doctor's expression flickered, surprise, then disgust, then back to professional neutrality. "Let's get her examined." "Sir, you'll need to wait outside." "I'm not leaving her." Hospital policy.
I'm not
"Leaving her." Emmanuel's voice carried a finality that made the doctor nod and gesture for them to follow. The examination room was cold, fluorescent lights humming overhead. Naomi lay on the paper-covered table while the doctor checked her injuries, calling out observations to a nurse who wrote everything down with mechanical precision. Contusion to left eye. Laceration on lower lip requiring sutures. Bruising consistent with blunt force trauma to shoulders, arms, and upper torso. Multiple defensive wounds on forearms. Then the ultrasound machine wheeled in, gel cold on Naomi's exposed belly, the wand pressing down while everyone in the room held their breath. The heartbeat filled the room. Fast and strong, the sound of life persisting despite everything. "Baby's heart rate is strong," the doctor said, and Naomi started crying, relief flooding through her so intensely she thought she might vomit. "No signs of placental abruption. No bleeding. But you'll need to stay for observation. What happened to you was severe trauma. We need to monitor for the next 24 hours to ensure no delayed complications." "She'll stay as long as necessary," Emmanuel said. "Whatever she needs." They moved Naomi to a private room on the maternity ward. Dawn was breaking outside the windows, pink light filtering through curtains. A nurse came to Starden 4, check vitals again, adjust pillows. "Try to rest," she said. "Doctor will check on you in a few hours." But the nurse didn't leave. She stood at the foot of the bed, staring at Naomi's face with an intensity that made Naomi uncomfortable. "Is something wrong?" Emmanuel asked. "I'm sorry, The nurse stepped closer, her name tag reading Grace Okonkwo, RN. She was maybe 50, elegant even in scrubs, with silver threading through her hair and eyes that were filling with tears for reasons Naomi couldn't understand. "What's your name?" "Your full name?"
Naomi.
"Naomi Okafor." She glanced at Emmanuel, confused. "Why?" "Before you married. What was your name before?" "Naomi Adeyemi." "My mother's name. She raised me alone." Grace's hand flew to her mouth. Your mother. What was her name?
Adiz.
Naomi's heart started beating faster, some instinct telling her this conversation was important, even though she didn't understand why. Adiz Okonkwo. But she took the name Adeyemi after my father died. Before I was born. What was your father's name? The question came out trembling, urgent. Grace had moved closer, was gripping the bed rail like she needed it for support. Chief Okonkwo. From Nsukka. That's all my mother told me before she died. She said he died before I was born, that his family didn't accept her, so she left and raised me alone. Why are you asking me this? Grace was crying openly now, tears streaming down her face. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands, scrolled through photos, then turned the screen toward Naomi. The photograph showed a distinguished elderly man in traditional attire, rich burgundy wrapper, coral beads around his neck, a walking stick topped with carved ivory. He sat in an ornate chair surrounded by family. Dozens of people. Children, grandchildren, in-laws, all arranged around him like planets orbiting the sun. That's my father, Grace whispered. Chief Emeka Okonkwo. Retired senator. Still alive. Still living in Nsukka in the family compound. Naomi stared at the photo. At the old man's face, his nose, the shape of his eyes, the way he held his head. She saw her own face reflected there, saw her mother's features mixed with his, saw the truth written in genetic code that couldn't lie. That's impossible, my mother said. Your mother disappeared 27 years ago. Grace sat on the edge of the bed, holding the phone between them like evidence in a trial. She was pregnant. My father's youngest wife at the time. There was a dispute with the senior wives, jealousy, accusations. Adiz was young, barely 20, and she couldn't handle the politics. One day, she just vanished. Left in the night. Took nothing but the clothes she was wearing. My father searched for her for years. Hired investigators. Checked every hospital, every village, every market. He thought she'd died. Thought you died.
No.
Naomi's head was shaking, denying what her eyes were seeing. No, my mother wouldn't lie. She said my father was dead. She lied to protect you. Or maybe she was protecting herself. Maybe she thought if you knew, you'd try to find us, and she'd built a life away from the family drama. Grace reached out, touched Naomi's hand carefully, like she was handling something precious and breakable. I have brothers and sisters you've never met. Nieces and nephews. A father who has mourned you for 27 years. Who lights candles every year on the day your mother disappeared, praying you're alive somewhere. The room tilted. Emmanuel's hand found Naomi's shoulder, grounding her, but she felt like she was floating away from her own body. I'm not an orphan? You've never been an orphan. Grace was scrolling through more photos now, showing Naomi faces that carried echoes of her own. You're an Okonkwo, one of the most powerful political families in Enugu state. You have a birthright, an inheritance, a family that has been incomplete without you. I'm a seamstress from Nsukka, Naomi whispered. I have nothing. I am nothing. You're a senator's daughter. Grace squeezed her hand. You're my sister. And when our father finds out you're alive, when he sees his granddaughter growing in your belly, when he learns what's been done to you. Her face hardened. People who hurt Okonkwo family members learn very quickly that we protect our own. Emmanuel made a sound, something between a laugh and a sob. Your mother beat you because she thought you were beneath us. Because she thought you were a poor village girl who trapped me. He pressed his hands to his face. And you're actually royalty, Grace finished. Not actual royalty, but close enough in Enugu. Our father served 3 terms in the Senate. Our family owns pharmaceutical supply companies, real estate, trading companies. We have connections in government, medicine, business. And we have been searching for you for 27 years. Naomi looked at the photo again. At the old man surrounded by family, his face kind but tired, carrying the weight of long grief. Her father.
Alive.
Not dead. Not a ghost from stories. Real. Does he know? She whispered. Does he know you found me? Grace was already dialing her phone, bringing it to her ear. He's about to. The phone rang twice before a male voice answered, groggy with sleep. Grace? It's 5 a.m. Someone better be dying. Papa. Grace's voice broke on the word. I found her. I found Adi's daughter. Your granddaughter is here. She's alive, Papa.
She's alive.
The silence on the other end stretched so long Naomi thought the call had dropped. Then she heard it, a sound like an old man's heart breaking and healing simultaneously, like 27 years of grief cracking open to let hope rush in. Where? Chief Okonkwo's voice came through the speaker, shaking.
Where is she?
I'm coming now. Don't let her leave. Don't let her disappear. I'm coming. University Teaching Hospital. Maternity ward. Room 304. Papa, she's pregnant. You're going to be a great-grandfather. Another sound. This one definitely crying. I'm coming, he said again. Tell her I'm coming. Tell her I never stop looking. Tell her. His voice broke completely. Tell her I love her. That I've always loved her. Even when I didn't know if she existed. Grace looked at Naomi, tears streaming down both their faces now. Did you hear him? Naomi nodded, unable to speak, her hand pressed to her belly where her baby, the great-grandchild of a senator, the heir to a dynasty, kicked with renewed vigor, as if celebrating the revelation. Emmanuel stood frozen by the bed, watching his wife transform before his eyes. Not physically, but something fundamental had shifted. The powerless woman his mother had tried to destroy was gone. In her place sat an Okonkwo. And in Enugu, that meant everything. 6 weeks later, the Okonkwo family mansion blazed with light like a small city transplanted onto the hills of Nsukka. Lanterns hung from ancient trees. Generators hummed in perfect harmony. Music drifted across manicured lawns where politicians in Igbata mingled with business moguls in designer suits, where doctors and lawyers and people who made decisions that affected thousands gathered to celebrate something they'd thought impossible. The return of the lost princess. Naomi stood in the master bedroom, her bedroom now, Chief Okonkwo had insisted, the room her mother had fled from 27 years ago, and stared at her reflection in the full-length mirror. The woman looking back was a stranger wearing her face. The wrapper was pure silk, handwoven in deep purple with gold threading that caught the light like captured fire. Gold jewelry at her throat, her wrists, her ears, real gold, the kind that carried weight and history. Her hair was braided in traditional style by aunties who'd cried while working, saying she looked exactly like her mother at that age. Beautiful, regal, Okonkwo. In her arms, wrapped in white lace and sleeping peacefully despite the noise filtering up from below, was Adi's. Named for the grandmother she'd never meet, the woman who'd run from luxury to raise her daughter in poverty rather than endure the politics of polygamy. 6 pounds, 3 ounces of perfect health, born screaming into a world that had already transformed around her. She's beautiful. Grace appeared in the doorway, also dressed in ceremonial attire, coral beads clicking as she moved. Papa is beside himself. I've never seen him cry this much. Even at Mama's funeral, he was stoic. But this... She smiled. This is joy crying. Relief crying. The kind of tears that heal old wounds. Naomi adjusted the baby's wrap, her hands still learning the automatic movements of motherhood. Is he here? Emmanuel? Downstairs. Looking terrified, Grace sat on the bed, careful not to wrinkle her wrapper. He's been good these past weeks. Attending therapy, like you asked. Sleeping on that couch without complaint.
Giving you space.
But sister, you need to decide. Are you forgiving him or divorcing him? Because he's in limbo, and limbo is its own kind of torture. He chose his mother over me for 7 months, while she starved me,
poisoned me,
tried to kill his child. And then he chose you when it mattered most. Grace's voice was gentle but firm. He threw his mother out. He believed you when he saw the truth. He's been crawling through broken glass to prove he's changed. That counts for something. Does it count enough? Grace reached over and touched the baby's tiny fist. Only you can answer that. But I'll say this, the Emmanuel downstairs isn't the same man who married you. He's been broken and rebuilt. Humbled. That's either enough or it isn't. But you don't have to decide today. Today is for celebration. A knock at the door. One of Naomi's new cousins. She had dozens now. The family tree so vast, she'd given up trying to memorize everyone. Poked her head in. They're ready for you. Papa says it's time. Naomi's stomach flipped. I don't know if I can do this. All those people are your family, Grace finished, standing and offering her hand. Your birthright. Your inheritance. Everything Sonia said you didn't deserve, you're about to claim it all.
Come.
Let's show Enugu who you really are. They descended the grand staircase together, Naomi carrying her daughter, Grace walking beside her like a guard of honor. The conversation below quieted as people noticed them, hundreds of faces turning upward, watching the lost daughter make her entrance. At the bottom of the stairs stood Chief Okonkwo. He'd aged since that hospital room 6 weeks ago, or maybe Naomi was just seeing him more clearly. 83 years old, frail in body but iron in will, leaning on a carved walking stick but standing straight with dignity that time couldn't erode. When he saw her, his face transformed, tears spilling down weathered cheeks without shame. Adiz, he whispered, using her mother's name like he was seeing a ghost made flesh. Papa. The word felt strange in Naomi's mouth, foreign but right. She reached the bottom step and he pulled her into an embrace that smelled like shea butter and old books and safety she'd never known existed. My daughter, he said into her hair. My granddaughter.
Thank God.
Thank God you came home. The crowd erupted into applause, ululation from the women piercing the air with joy. Emmanuel stood at the edge of the gathering, watching his wife be welcomed into a world that made his family's pharmaceutical business look like pocket change. Watching her claim a throne he'd never known she deserved. Chief Okonkwo released Naomi and raised his hands for silence. The crowd obeyed immediately, conversation dying like someone had turned off a switch. This was a man accustomed to being heard. 27 years ago, his voice carried across the compound, strong despite his age. My youngest wife disappeared while pregnant with my child. I searched everywhere. Spent fortunes on investigators. Prayed every day for their return. I thought I would die without ever meeting my daughter, without knowing if she'd even survived birth. He paused, composing himself. But God is faithful. What was lost has been found. What was taken has been restored. My daughter Naomi, my granddaughter Adiz, they stand here today as proof that miracles still happen. The crowd murmured agreement, and the amens rippling through the gathering. There are those, Chief Okonkwo continued, his voice hardening, who treated my daughter with cruelty, who judged her by appearance rather than character, who believed that poverty made her worthless and wealth made them superior. His eyes scanned the crowd, and several people shifted uncomfortably. Let this be a lesson. Dignity dwells not in bank accounts or family names, but in how we treat those who cannot defend themselves. And those who lift their hand against the vulnerable may find they have struck royalty unaware of their crown. More applause, but Naomi barely heard it. She was looking past the crowd, past the celebration, to where a figure stood at the compound gates. Sonia. She stood outside the locked gates like a beggar, her designer handbag clutched in trembling hands, her clothes expensive but wrinkled, her face carrying the weight of 6 weeks that had not been kind. Word had spread through Enugu's pharmaceutical circles like fire through dry grass. What she'd done, who her victim had turned out to be. Grace had ensured the story reached every medical board, every business association, every society gathering where reputation mattered. Sonia's company had lost its supply contracts within a week. Chief Okonkwo's pharmaceutical empire supplied half the southeast, and when word came down that anyone doing business with Sonia would lose access to Okonkwo products, the decision had been easy. Her business collapsed like a house built on sand, creditors circling, assets seized, the empire she'd built through sacrifice crumbling under the weight of her own cruelty. Their eyes met across the distance. Sonia's face carried something Naomi had never seen there before: fear. Not of violence or poverty. Fear of irrelevance. Of standing outside gates that would never open for her again. Of watching the woman she'd tried to destroy crowned as queen. Chief Okonkwo was still speaking, announcing something Naomi had begged him to reconsider. In addition to her rightful inheritance as my daughter, I am transferring primary ownership of Okonkwo Pharmaceutical Supplies to Naomi, effective immediately. She will manage the company with the support of her siblings and our board. She will rebuild what her mother would have inherited had she stayed. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Okonkwo Pharmaceutical Supplies was the crown jewel of the family empire, the company that supplied hundreds of smaller distributors across 3 states. The company Sonia's business had depended on for inventory. Emmanuel appeared at Naomi's elbow, his face pale. Did you know about this? He told me this morning. I tried to talk him out of it. I don't know anything about running a pharmaceutical company. You'll learn, Chief Okonkwo said, having overheard. Your siblings will teach you. You have a master's degree in business administration waiting for you at the university. I've already arranged enrollment. You have everything you need except confidence. And that, my daughter, will come with time. Papa, I'm just a seamstress. You were never just anything. His voice was firm. You survived poverty, loss, and cruelty that would have destroyed weaker people. You protected my great-granddaughter while being beaten by a woman who should have treasured you. If you can survive, you can certainly learn to manage a business. He squeezed her hand. Besides, I'm not dying tomorrow. You'll have time to learn while I'm still here to teach you. The ceremony continued. The baby was presented to the family, blessed by priests who sprinkled holy water and made prayers in Igbo that Naomi barely understood but felt in her bones. Food appeared, mountains of it, jollof rice and mwamwa and egusi soup and fried chicken and suya and chin-chin, and enough pepper soup to feed a village. Music swelled. Live bands playing highlife that made the old people dance, and the young people film everything for social media. Emmanuel stayed at Naomi's side but didn't touch her, maintaining the respectful distance she'd requested. He looked smaller somehow, diminished by the wealth and power surrounding them, by the realization that his wife had never needed his family's status, because she had her own. I don't deserve your forgiveness, he said quietly during a lull in the celebration. I know that. But I'm asking for it anyway, for the chance to become the husband you deserved from the beginning. Naomi looked at him, and really looked at him. He'd lost weight in the past 6 weeks, worried about eating at him. He attended therapy twice a week and sent her the receipts to prove it. He'd written letters that made her cry, apologies that didn't make excuses, acknowledgments of every failure. He'd sold his car and given her the money, saying he didn't deserve luxuries while she recovered from what his negligence had allowed. I haven't decided yet, she said honestly. Part of me wants to punish you forever, make you feel what I felt. But another part, she shifted the baby to her other arm. Another part remembers why I married you, who you were before your mother's chains got too tight. I need to know if that man still exists or if he's gone forever. He exists. I swear he does. I'll prove it, however long it takes. 6 months, Naomi said, the number coming to her with sudden certainty. 6 months of therapy, of proving you've changed, of showing me you can protect this family, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. After that, I'll decide. 6 months. Emmanuel nodded like she'd given him a gift instead of a deadline. Thank you. For the chance. For not giving up on us completely. The party swirled around them. Naomi's new nieces and nephews begged to hold the baby. Grace appeared with food Naomi didn't have an appetite for but ate anyway, relearning what it felt like to have meals prepared with love instead of poison. Chief Okonkwo held court from his chair, receiving well-wishers with the grace of someone who'd spent decades in politics, but his eyes kept finding Naomi across the crowd, checking that she was still there, still real, still his. As evening fell and the celebration showed no signs of ending, Naomi carried her sleeping daughter to the balcony for air. The compound spread below her like a kingdom, lights twinkling, music drifting up, her family, celebrating her return. She heard footsteps and turned, expecting Emmanuel or Grace. Instead, security was escorting someone to the gate. Sonia, who'd apparently tried to enter the compound, was being politely but firmly removed. As she passed below the balcony, she looked up. Their eyes met one final time. Naomi waited for satisfaction, for triumph, for some dark joy in watching her tormentor humiliated. Instead, she felt only sadness. Sadness for what Sonia had destroyed in herself while trying to destroy others. Sadness for Emmanuel, who'd lost his mother not to death, but to her own cruelty. Sadness for the baby in her arms who would grow up knowing her grandmother had tried to kill her before she was born. Sonia opened her mouth, maybe to apologize, maybe to curse. Naomi would never know. She turned away, went back inside, and closed the balcony door on that chapter of her life. Behind her, the party continued. Her father was laughing at something one of her brothers said. Grace was teaching Emmanuel how to dance, his clumsy attempts making everyone laugh. The baby slept through it all, peaceful and perfect, and alive despite everything. Naomi looked down at her daughter's face and made a silent promise. You will never know what it means to be unwanted. You will never know what it means to be judged by your mother's poverty or your father's mistakes. You will grow up knowing you are an Okonkwo, that you are loved, that your life matters. And you will grow up knowing that your mother was a seamstress from a village who became a queen not because of her bloodline, but because she survived what should have destroyed her. Because she refused to let cruelty make her cruel. Because she chose hope even when hope looked like foolishness. That is your inheritance. Not the money or the company or the mansion, but the knowledge that dignity can't be given or taken away. It can only be claimed. And Naomi, orphan, seamstress, survivor, senator's daughter, CEO, mother, had claimed hers at last. Outside the gates, Sonia watched the celebration she would never be part of again, finally understanding the truth she'd been too blind to see. The woman she'd tried to destroy had always been a queen. She just hadn't known she was wearing a crown.